Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service, here today to finally present the Pluto return for the United States. But I do want to add this. If you are tuning in from another country, I do want to let you know that I did just a few minutes on the Aries point so I could see how our Pluto return was affecting the rest of the world, and no shocker, it is. So there is something in here for everyone. With that said, before I begin, I want to say thank you for watching the video. I want to give a special thank you to all of the people who have been faithfully following me and helping me to build this very small channel. I hope that it won't always be small, but it is for the time being. It is what it is. But I want to thank you guys because you're the greatest, and it's so wonderful hearing from you. So with that said, if you're not a subscriber, I hope you'll consider becoming one. And if you would, please like, share, but most particularly comment, because I really do love hearing from you guys. So we are going to, as promised, look at the Pluto return. So just to give you an idea of how I'm going to approach this. We are going to very quickly look at the original charts of both the Democrats and the Republicans to see how this Pluto return is going to affect their charts. Now, I did a little bit of this when I was doing the Sibley chart, but I do remember mentioning at the time that I would look at it again when I was doing the Pluto return, which is what we're going to do today. So I do want to point something out. I realized that we were even looking at a video where I did the difference between the Sibley chart and the Nick Champion chart. And I want to point something out before we even begin this work. The Sibley Pluto return occurs at 27 degrees 32 minutes, whereas the Nick Champion Pluto is 27 degrees 25 minutes. So though they're about 3 days apart, and they are roughly about 3 days apart, they're only 7 minutes apart. Okay, so let me explain why I'm going to use Sibley again. And I've started with Sibley. So part of it's the consistency of the work, and I want to remain consistent. But the other part of it is that it kind of came to me very clearly as I'm preparing to do the next chart for the website, which will be on the Oath Keepers. Yes, I belong to a political astrology group, a bunch of astrologers that do politics. And some of the astrologers were able to get not only the Oath Keepers indoctrination, but also Stuart Rhodes, at least the date of his birth. So that's all for a little bit later. But one of the things I really want to talk about is that when the astrologers had presented that material, they did present initially that it was sometime in March that they originally come together, but really they're registered. Most important to note this, they're not registered until I think it's October of that year in Vegas. And I think that, it's really important to note that the final date is sometimes the strongest chart. Example, you're dating somebody and you just know it's going to go to the next level. So as an astrologer, you might look at the chart of when you met, maybe when you first touched. These are really important charts, okay, because they can tell you about the longevity and the possibility of where that relationship could go. Then you get engaged. Well, actually, that's another chart. And then you get married. And that's another chart. But the real chart of the two people is the marriage. So it isn't about coming together. It isn't even about getting engaged. It's about the moment that it is presented before the people and God, so to speak. And when I looked at the Sibley versus the Nick Champion chart, there's, as I've pointed out in the video, it's very hard for me as an astrologer to say that one has more validity than the other. I think they're both very valid. But I think that because we celebrate the 4th of July, and because the founding fathers made that the date of their indoctrination, I think that's the date we have to go with. That's just me. I don't I don't feel like my opinion is going to work for everybody, but I did want to throw that out there, why I came to the conclusions that I did and why I look at things the way that I do, because I think that's really important. Okay. So just like starting in random, I'm going to go to the chart in a minute, but before I get there, I want to start with some really what I call obvious notes. Okay. First one is that the Pluto, that Pluto itself squares the Democratic ascendant and it squares the Republican Pluto. Okay. Interestingly enough, when we get to that, I'm going to show that Pluto is actually for the Republicans in there as well. And I can even talk about what that means. But basically, when you look at Pluto as it squares the Democratic ascendant, okay, and this would have occurred even in 1776. Oh, that's right. There were no Democrats. So it's happening now. And what it says here is that there is intense encounters with others where the result will be change. That's the Democrats. Okay. Pluto to Pluto. It's talking about how the Republicans will resist. They will fight change. They will cause issues, but those issues will ultimately cause issues for themselves. Okay? It talks about how Pluto, right now, Pluto, is square transiting Zeus. And what that means is that we have tension. Sure, I'm sure we can't relate to that, right? Anxiety, volatility. It's like a simmering pot. That's one note. It brings a concern about infrastructure. Isn't that interesting, considering the infrastructure bill passed? But because of natural occurrences, I think we're going to be very concerned about it even in the next year. It talks about major events such as fires and explosions. That includes volcanoes. Okay, and these are both slow movers. This is going to last a minute. Okay, it says this is a situation or a residual state of alarm. Now, what's interesting is I do want to point this out. They've actually been in square for a while. Have we not had world fires like nobody has seen? Doesn't matter what country. You're seeing climate issues that are off the charts. Fires are but one, okay? But we do need to pay attention to the explosion concept. We do need to pay attention to the volcanoes because apparently those tectonic plates could be shifting here. It also, I like that, a residual or a situation or residual state of alarm. Yeah, part of this was, with the virus, but it started with all of the natural disasters occurring because of climate change. It also talks about how this particular energy, this square, fosters suspicions and fuels primitive responses like people who shoot people. That's a primitive response to kill somebody when you're upset. That is the most basic principle. I mean, think about that. It takes a bigger man to rise above. And when you resort to violence on any form and for any reason, you are playing to the lower energy forms. And I think there's not many people that will disagree with that. Okay, so a couple of things. And it is a progress chart that I was doing for them. I want to say that when I did the chart for the progressions of the Democrats and Republicans, I really actually used secondary progress charts. And one of the things that was noted was that particularly with regards to the Democrats, there was a sun opposite Pluto, which again means that there is there's an influencing structure that's causing a power structure or power struggle, and another structure another party, is causing a power struggle. Okay. It talks about how it squares advice, which is really interesting because the fact that people are not listening to the science with regards to coronavirus is one of the reasons why we're still dealing with it. Just throwing that out there. I'll get to this in a minute. The Dems also have a transiting, a Uranus that sits with the transiting Pluto, and I'll get to that in a minute. Okay. Now, as far as we get to it, the Republicans are concerned. Hold on. You know how it is with this 70,000 pages of notes. I apologize. I did find it. Okay, so for the secondary progressed of the Republican chart, what we got was a Pluto Volcanus. They're very close on the dial, on the same side. And what it means is that there's a lot of quick transformations within the Republican Party, but some of these transformations will absolutely be too quick and will not go as expected because of it. It's almost like, you know, you put something and you make it grow too quickly, you sometimes affect the integrity of it. So that's a factor. The other things that showed up in the axis was Node, Poseidon, Adamite, which are all together, okay? And Node Poseidon, when I first looked at it, which is really interesting because that's in their secondary progressive. In actuality, Poseidon is in the Aries point right now. And one of the things that Poseidon represents is propaganda. And one of the connections that the Republicans have made is with news agencies such as Fox, which is really actually an entertainment company. I know that people don't really know that, but if you look up their paperwork, they are not a news company. They do not do news. They are opinion and they are entertainment. However, they are a propaganda agency as well for the Republicans. So I'm just using them as an example. And one of the things that comes up there is Adamite. So there's either going to be resistance from these connections, or they're enduring these connections, or these connections are the bottom of what's causing a lot of their transformations being too quick. Some of the stuff that's going to be happening to them could be the result of some of these connections that they have that are related to propaganda. The other thing I wanted to point out was with Pluto Volcanus, you are looking at them, trying to resist, but I also think that when you look at that Volcanus, you do see people that try to change things through pressure. And I think that that would be very accurate. So I just wanted to do that really quickly. I could go back and look at these charts. Oh my goodness, we could make such a study of this, but I really don't want to do that because I don't want to waste that much time. I don't want this video to be that long. So the next thing that I would like for us to look at is very quickly, let's jump, as I turn my page, let's jump to each of these charts very, very quickly to see in the original charts how each of these parties are affected by their original charts. Oh, you can tell I'm back. Okay, so this is the original chart. And the first thing that you notice here is the 2817. So within a degree, there is that sharp square that I was talking about. I am not going to look at this part of the chart in too much detail. Okay, I want to go right to the dial because it's all about saving some time today. And I got a really big thing I want to do at the end. Okay, so you can tell I've already been working. Look at this. Okay, so at 2742, and we're going to go backwards to the 30 mark, but look at that. Uranus is huge in the chart with, and this is on a separate page here. Here we go. So that's like really interesting that we have Uranus, Pluto. Both planets are about change. So the Democrats also have in their chart that they are affected by Uranus right now. And with that said, then we can expect that sudden movements can occur within the Democrats, particularly as it relates to transformation and change. So that each of these parties on some level is really being asked to transform and to change as a result of this Pluto return. Okay. Now, I also want to show this in the Democrats chart. Look at that midheaven Adamitas. That's delays, which is what's really been going on a lot for them, is that their agendas for the future keep hitting delays and obstacles. So I thought that was really interesting. And I like the ascendant Mars, which means that they're going to be unpredictable, these Democrats, and they are on a mission, so to speak, as the ascendant Mars. So a pretty good one for them. Not as much as I had seen. Yeah, Victoria's here. Now, Victoria's here in both charts, so I'm not quite sure what that might mean, okay? But Victoria is more in line, actually, with the Democrats than with the Republicans, but even with the Republicans, it's within the range. It also is close to, but I have to find out where, oh yes, right here. Okay, so if I go up to 5, oops, 1, 2, 3, oh, it's 4. Okay, so all right. So as an astrologer, I would be allowed to do anything between the 4th and the 5th degree. And look what's there, Pluto. So you're going to notice that Pluto is in the axis of both the Democrats and the Republicans. So it's in their chart. Now, obviously, this is not the same Pluto, because this Pluto is way up here and this Pluto's way down here. Okay, so this is an earlier, I'll tell you exactly. It's an earlier degree, first off. So it doesn't occur as late as, here it is. It's Aries. So it's not even in the same sign. It's just in another cardinal sign, but at 4 degrees of Aries. Now, what's really interesting is that Chiron is actually not far from there now. And it makes me think that when the Democrats were beginning to win their elections, that Chiron was probably in that vicinity of 4 degrees. Okay? So moving on, I just wanted you to see that. It also talks about how it's close to Pluto. And one of the things that it talks about is that for a party, that there's a bit of grief over the decline, and that changes within are psychologically the worst situations. Well, okay, did I not just talk about propaganda connections with the other party? You're going to also notice this with the other party more than even the Democrats, is that it equals this illness, okay, the disease. And it's interesting because for the Democrats, it is the unpredictability of the other, which in their case is the Republicans. Their volcanists, their ability to resist, to apply pressure. So what's happened is that you look at like the psychologically worst case scenario, right? And that's what they're dealing with. And they are. Okay? There's not a Republican giving them a break. There's no cuts happening here. There's no John McCain's. Okay? And so it creates that issue. Now, that's all I'm going to do on this, okay, is I just wanted to look at the dial, which, and I'm not even going to pull in their extra asteroids. I'm going to do something with the asteroids in a minute, okay? So let's change charts. Okay, got it up. And I don't really want to look at the wheel itself per se, because remember, I'm trying to really expedite through this, but I'm not real fond of this chart anyway. I think it's interesting, though, that this chart would ironically be featuring almost in opposition as an ascendant. So remember that one was square. The other one really could, be in opposition for real. So I think that that's real interesting, but that's not what I really want to spend time on. Here's where I want to be. Okay, and you can tell that I've been here. And it's really interesting. I'm right at one of the areas I want to talk about. Okay, so I had to wiggle. You're going to notice this, that when it comes to like a half a degree or whatever, astrologers will wiggle a bit, okay? So at about 5.5 degrees, because really we can go 4 to 6. 1 degree on either side of that 5. And what is it? Well, it's a health asteroid. Yep. And you notice how the health asteroid is, and get this one, because if I go straight to the 5, all right, just, for the heck of it, look where it goes. Okay, so you have a health thing. You also have somewhat of a midpoint between Poseidon and a health matter, and this Adamite. Okay, as I said before, Adamitis, right? So that's like being stuck and all that. Okay, but here's where I got real interested. Come down here. You not only have Adamite, you have Shiva. It's a withdrawal. It's a backing down to reconstruct. It is something that I do predict will happen to Republicans because, and this comes up too, there's the Republicans, and I do have it on my notes, they threw in with a leader. Oh, here we go. Okay. Let's talk about some of this. Okay. So as I did, and you'll notice that, here there's not a lot of midpoints, but actually there is right here. And see how victory isn't far? Okay, see, victory's like very close to 28 degrees, but at 27:30 or 27:21, I'm just going to leave it there because it's right in there. But look, that's chaos. What does the Pluto return mean to a Republican? That it's an opportunity to create chaos. How are they doing it? By resisting. Adamitas. But also by being bullies and being around bullies and using bullies and not stopping. Estrella, there's no solution. Actually, there will be no solution for the Republicans until they regroup, which is what Shiva's trying to tell them. Okay? It also points out the health issue with regards to business. Again, this is going out a little bit, but it is very accurate because 5 degrees equals 20 degrees, which is exactly where I am. Okay? This chart, when I go back here again, hold on. Oh. Okay, so see, I'm right there. Let's look at some of these midpoints because this was really telling. Look at this Sun, Neptune. That's telling you someone's sick. Now, if you have Sun, Neptune natally, you might have been sick as a child. Generally, it can be a longevity point, okay? But right now, we got Sun, Neptune. Neptune is a lack of clarity. Neptune is confusion and deceitful. To deceive, to be deceived. I think if you're a Republican, you're on both ends of that. It's also talking about a Vulcanus to Cupido. Let me point this stuff out to you. There's your Sun, Neptune. Oh, here's your Estrella Adamitas that I've been talking about. Like, this resistance. This is how they're going to play it. They're not going to help in any way, okay? Because that would give, of course, a victory to the other party. And this is all about resisting victories, okay? You can see that in the astrology. So then, I know you're probably thinking, how logical? Yeah, astrology is incredibly logical. That's why it's ruled by the asteroid Urania, or Uranus, which is computers and all of that. But I like Urania because it's logic. Now, here we have a Zeus Cupido. And you're thinking, oh, that means powerful party, or a powerful family, or a powerful organization, right? Now, it's a pressure organization. And basically what it's talking about is that it's, believe it or not, even though it looks like they're resisting, within the party itself, there are changes created or changes that will be in the making. Okay, and I do believe that's true. It also has a Chronos Venus, and I thought that was one of the most interesting because it's the love of an authority figure. It even describes a growing benevolence of the boss, chief, or government. I don't see it as that. It could be. I mean, I think that all the while, I think Biden is really trying to bend over backwards to the Republicans, and especially the real Republicans, you know. So I'm not going to say that's, you know, could be part of it, but I think it's the connection to Trump, and it's how they feel about Trump. Okay. And the reason why I say Trump is because when you look at the other end of the Adamatus, you're met with a bully. Toro. Toro's a bully. I just thought that was incredibly interesting. And it doesn't end. In other words, I think, you know, I'm not obviously a Trump fan. Well, I don't know what guess you could make on that. But I can tell you that I had a lot of hope that he would just go away. But the Astrea is telling me that he's there for a while. And it's right with the Toro. And it's right with the benevolent. I think the last thing he is benevolent, but that's just me. I have never liked him, though, so I'm very biased. I didn't like him in the 70s. I didn't like him in the 80s, so I always thought he was one of those pompous, talentless jerks that always, you know, put like through themselves at the media. So that's just my opinion. Again, lots of different opinions, but a lot of people are surprised that I know so much about him back in the 70s. Well, he tried to be a public figure even then. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, I do want to say, though, that it was the illness that really brought them down. And one of the things that you could look at to really see that accurately is if you go to Uranus here, which is, again, not far from some of the stuff at the top. It's just not being hit the way that, there it is. Look at that. This is not being hit in the same. Oh, yeah, it is. It's 538, so it is being hit in the same way. So the changes that are occurring in one party are also occurring in the other. Woe is me. Now, here's some things I want to look at. And I'm doing this as a lesson for you, the audience, because everyone always thinks Jupiter is just a hunky-dory, wonderful planet. And I'm not saying it's not. But what I am saying is that when you take it and put Jupiter in with all of this that I just got over telling you about, the propaganda, the resist, the pressure campaigns, the, okay, all of these things that are going on, then you see all of, well, first of all, Apollon Mercury is the, you know, the messages that they're getting out to everybody. And remember, they're propaganda, but also realize that, and I'm not going to go with Apollon Midheaven because I don't like their chart. I think it's theirs that's, yeah, theirs is a 12 p.m. chart, like a noon chart. I like the Dems better because they have a real time. That's just me. But, you know, look at this. I mean, there's a lot of pressure in the party because of money. It is the party of money. Okay. It is the party of big business. It is the party of, okay. We went through all that. And, you know, when you start looking at like the Jupiter ascendant, the Jupiter midheaven, but again, I don't like the midheaven, so look at Jupiter Mercury. One of the things that I really feel is that they are spreading destruction. And you say to me, why would you say that, Colleen? Because I do math. Because these two equal this one. And you got to understand what Shiva and Shiva bring to the table as astrologers. You have to understand that that isn't just telling you that they're expanding. They're expanding their destruction. Is everybody following that? Because that's what's key to the charts when you read. Okay, that's really important. You can't keep that Shiwa out of there, you would get a real misconception. You would misrepresent this chart. You would think that they're bringing goodwill and benevolence into the year 2022, but they're not. And we know it because we just discussed it. Okay? I don't want to hang on this too long. Part of my calling is not just to inform you, but is to educate you. And I know that I have a lot of really interested in astrology people. I know that I have some really half decent astrologers out there. And I really want you guys to see that, because this is where the asteroids separate the boys from the men, or the girls from the women. So, or the adults from the children. Okay, do you understand where I'm going with this? And understand that that is a key element in this reading because of where it's positioned. Okay, let's jump. I have a bigger project to show you, and I don't want this to run too long. I'm back. Okay, so I picked up a few more pages of notes too that I wanted to go through really quick. Some of the things that astrologers are going to talk about with regards to the USA Pluto return are things like major changes in laws, shifts in government structures, exposure of deep corruption, need to heal the past, civil war / power struggles, conflicts with other countries, agreements / partnerships with other countries, leaving agreements / partnerships with other countries, changes or an overhaul in banking and economics. Let's see, changes or an overhaul when it comes to big business, unconventional leaders, death / overthrowing of leaders, changing of allies, rise of independence, rebalancing power dynamics. Okay, I just wanted to list those. Now, here we are just about to hit, but because it's Pluto, everything I just mentioned to you has already come to our attention in the last 2 years. So I think that the Pluto, because it is Pluto and because it's such a slow-moving planet, has been affecting us for some time. I'm going to go and say that it could be affecting us as much as when Trump made it into office. Okay? So some other notes that I wrote on it is that basically there's going to be a lot of material about it, and you want to check it out, you know. Basically, the thing we know about Pluto is that it really points out things that we are not in control of. That's what Pluto is really known for. And it represents those slow changes that can not only be difficult, but they're monumental when it comes to changing lives. Okay? It's a very intense energy. And believe it or not, the loss of control can have a really strong effect on an individual. Some individuals more than others, which is obvious. It's going to take place over a period of several years, okay, which it did. And it's, I'm trying to think of even when I wrote this. I don't even know. It was 18 degrees at that time, and now we're at 26. It was written a while ago, a couple of years ago. It's already entered the second house of the United States. And I think that for the United States, that because of the South Node in the second house, and of course that's after the Pluto, but still, there's a lot about money. It's a very strong house in this chart. And it's a lot about money, resources. And I think that that is, you're going to find out, particularly when it relates to the deep corruption in politics, that it's always going to be about the money. I don't think that's going to be a surprise. So basically, you have to remember certain things about Capricorn. It is ruled, initially, it is ruled by Saturn. That's what it is. Saturn is about structures. It's about discipline. It's about executive and managerial ability. It's about being organized. It's about taking on the task at hand. I think that's the biggest thing about Saturn is asking us to be more responsible. It's asking us to grow up, to be adults. Okay? Basically, one of the things that I talked about, and this is going back a couple of years, was that I also felt, and it's probably true on an under level, that socialism, which was once a bad word, is not so much anymore, thank God, and capitalism could meet head to head, okay, when it comes to things like democracy. And the reason why I say that is because we're going to find, if we don't know already, I have found out through just growing up, that capitalism is a very controlling mechanism. And I'll give you one example, okay? We used to grow hemp in this country, and hemp creates clothing, pretty much like cotton does. But because cotton is such a big industry in this country, it was a big industry. Hemp, you see where capitalism just said, nope, no more of that. The beef farmers did it. The cotton people did things like this. And this is capitalism, okay? Because in capitalism, the guy with the bigger dollar wins. Well, that's not fair in an equality situation. And that's where socialism is more fair. Also, there are a lot of articles out, you can check them on the internet, that people are happiest in those countries that are socialist. And I'm not referring to Brazil, because that guy is not a socialist, he's a fascist. I'm not referring to Turkey, that guy's a fascist. What I'm referring to would be like Finland and the Norwegian countries, you know, where they do have, Switzerland, where they do have a really good kind of a democracy, but it is socialism. And it's something that I've always been very pro-socialist, and even to the dismay of my parents when I was growing up. But I am. It is what it is. But I do believe that when the Pluto factor comes into being, that's what you're going to start to see as a bit of a clash there. Now, since we already have very progressive people on the left, I saw at that time very progressive people on the right. Okay? I got to be honest with you, people on the right are not progressive, they're fascists. And it's interesting because the left, which is the socialists, have brought out the fascism. Did I not say that capitalism runs a lot more like communism or fascism? Because the bigger dollar, here we go again with the bigger, brawnier, whatever, but it's not fair. And it really messed up our hemp industry. As a matter of fact, now we have to learn how to make cloth again from hemp. So, which, by the way, as a person who sews, is an incredible fabric. Just my opinion, but it is incredible. Anyway, that was one example. So basically, what else did I write here? Basically, we're going to be looking at how the wealthy got there and about how many people get rich off the backs of others. As a matter of fact, they're changing that right now with forcing companies to pay their employees more. Okay? I said that I saw the rise and the fall in one lifetime of factory workers. When I was growing up, I come from a long line of factory workers, and the assumption was that I would do that too. But while I was growing up in the 70s, they were taking away everything from those people, from cutting their pays to cutting their benefits. No, I did not end up working in a factory. It wasn't considered a good job by the 80s. But it is now again. So I think that, you know, it's very interesting to watch a cycle. And one of the reasons why I love studying cycles, and astrology really features that, is because I can witness things like that through looking at it. Okay, the other thing that we have to look at is the fact that as a U.S., and those of you in the rest of the world can attest to this, there's a real bad symptom here of adoring those people who are rich, not taking into account that they might be crooked as the day is long. I don't know how some of these people sleep at night, to be really honest with you. Okay? It's also talking about people feeling entitled, and the entitled people feel that they don't have to follow the same rules as the rest of the world. Are we not living in this? And this is something that's happening throughout the world, because that tennis player is not an American, and it wasn't an American country that kicked him out. But he did feel entitled, didn't he? So, it's, again, we have to look at our value systems. That's what the Pluto return is asking us to do. We have to look at what do we value as Americans. It's what was once of great value will no longer be of great value. I think that we are going to go from being a consumer country to a country that knows how to live simply. I do predict that. I'm hoping it happens in my lifetime, but I do think that's going to happen. Pluto also represents things like debt. All right. Debt is huge, because if you're in debt, you don't have control. No, your debtors do. You're the people who hold your debt. They have control. You do not have control. Okay. So this is not going to be an easy fix. It's going to be a division, which is another subsequent. I wrote that years before it happened. And it's not going to go away anytime soon, because the whole thing's going to last about 5 years. The direct hit doesn't even happen until February. And we got 2 more years of cleanup after that, right? So a year of that and 2 more years after that. So the fact is that governments are going to be desperate for money. And the cause of the reason why they need money, very bad decisions. Thieves among the coffers also. Some are worried about war. That is going to be an issue. We've got the Ukraine-Russia thing going on right now. But realize that when governments feel really depressed, okay, and desperate, and I think Russia's there, they feel that the only way to make money is to go to war. I know, because America had similar thoughts, and I'm thinking that that's a really stupid way to think, because you are not. You are creating more debt, but that's what some countries think. I'm going to be honest with you about the war thing, and this is going to include Russia and anyone else who thinks that they're going to start a war, China, North Korea. Let's just throw it out there. By 2030, we're going to be really looking at the world leaders, all of us, every single person on this planet Earth, okay? And people that have been, and I think it starts with our Pluto return, and I think that's why, but I think that the reality is that a lot of governments have been playing fast and loose, and they're going to get caught. They are going to get caught. And that includes people like Putin. We are not in an age. We were in an age where war was prevalent and prominent, and we could do that. That was the age before this one. But this age changed December 21st, 2020. We moved into Aquarius. And yes, it takes a while for an age to catch up, but you're going to see differences in how people in the governments already handle different factions, such as skirmishes. We'll see skirmishes. We're not as likely to see wars. We'll see revolutions, but we're not as likely to see wars, because the age of Aquarius represents the age of transparency, humanity, and creativity. Equality above all. So, if you consider that, then the very, very wealthy do have reasons to be concerned, because over time, I think that truths are going to come out. And as I wrote in my notes, the time to pay up is now. And that's what we're going to be seeing. So, one of the things that we as the United States have to accept as we go into this Pluto return is that we did some pretty awful things to other people, such as the Japanese during World War II, the Indians when we came to this country, and treated them just abominably ever since. the poor Africans who didn't even want to be here in the first place, but were brought here on slave ships. And they were brought here because they were outlawing slavery everywhere else. So I love the way, it's religious beliefs. That's why people got here, religious beliefs. No, it's not. It has a whole lot more to do with the object of slavery. But that's okay, because that truth is going to be out there and the whole world is going to know if they don't know already. Okay? So here I am. I've got this chart in front of us. I haven't even touched it yet. I'm going to switch right away to the dial. Now, I did want to look at, these are things that are going to change everybody, okay? So you've got a Uranus moon, which, by the way, is like going to be very hard to get the temperature of what's going on with the people, because it's going to be very unpredictable. I love the way the Republicans keep talking about how they're going to win in the midterms. I don't think the charts look favorably toward that. I'm just going to say. I also think they're not reading the people. I really don't. And this Pluto chart tells us that the people themselves are very unpredictable. Yeah, we might be mad at Biden because some things weren't done in the way we thought they should be. But are we happy with the Republicans? I don't think so. So, there's things like that. Now, I did want to do this. This was what I promised to do first, and it's right on my notes. And I'm going to pull these notes up. I went to the Aries point. Look at this. We have an ascendant down there, too. Okay. So we have a Poseidon, we have an ascendant down there, and this is why I really, really want the world to hear this video, because you will not be unscathed by our Pluto return. I wish I could give you better. The Apollon midheaven tells you that many are affected, but let's talk about some other things I've got here. I love the fact that the Pluto sun, and I think it's over here, hold on, 2230, hold on. I know I saw the moon, we did. Okay, surprises. That's what I saw. Okay, a lot of surprises. Yeah, world, you're going to be awful surprised at us. I also saw, let me see if I can find it. There was something, well, there's that Venus, Jupiter. We'll get to all these. But maybe it was back further. Let's see. One of the things you want to do is kind of play a little. See that Pluto Adamitas? Changes that are very stuck. Changes that have obstacles. Transformation. That's just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Look at this. Hestia. How hard are people working? And the rest of the world will be watching. So here's Pluto. Here's the sun. There is a Pluto sun in this. Okay, I'm trying to find it for you guys, but I'm having a hard time. I found it earlier. In any event, the Pluto sun does show up under the Aries point. You can see the 2 points, and you know that they're going to form a midpoint there just by where they're located, okay? And that means that the Aries point, the world is watching the sun, the changes, the transformations of the people, and of the United States, okay? Especially the changes of the structure of the government and the changes, because the sun is bigger than the people. The moon, the Uranus moon, that's the people. Also, Pluto ascendant. What we change will be very obvious to the surface. Okay. But then I saw some other things that I thought were really cool. Like there's a Chronos Volcanus, and that's why I knew I had to do that, because, and that's all up in here. Like, here we go, Apollon midheaven. There's where some of that stuff starts to show up. But when you're doing something like this, you want to go, there it is. You do want to go to both sides of that point and grab as many of those midpoints that you can. And I saw we had a Volcanus node, but our influence will be felt in the world, and the world will watch, because there's also a Hades Apollon, again, I'm going to have to jiggle a little bit for it, that tells us that there's general misery. Yep, that's what it says. So I'm not, again, going to spend a whole lot of time on that. I'm actually going to pull up a note paper like I did in my last video. Okay, welcome to How I Work. I just want to make sure, yes, we're back. Okay, what I did, and last time I explained what I did, and I put all the angles up, and then I put within 10 degrees everything that fell there. Today, you're going to get to see how I work with axes, okay? So axes are based on the wheel, and I have described them already that there's 4 points. Remember, for the Aries point, which I just did, it was 0 degrees, 2230, 15 degrees fixed, and 730 mutable. So here what I do is I'm using 2730 because that I did say that at the beginning of the video, that's what I'm using. Then I'm using 5 cardinal, and you saw me do this, 2730 cardinal, 1230 mutable, and 20 degrees of fixed. Those are the points that I went to when I began to look at the asteroid lists. Okay? And you can, and I know this is not very clear, but what I did was I actually went through the charts, okay, that were present in the Sibley return chart, which is the chart we saw at the very beginning. I did not use when the Pluto return chart was. I didn't, because I want to see what the Pluto return is going to do to the United States. So I went back to the Sibley chart. But I also used a lunar return from the Sibley chart so that I could pull all of those asteroids to the present. And this is what I came up with. So the Sibley chart, it brings up our need to be focused on work and goals. No surprise that Pluto is directly connected to work and goals, okay? Because everything about this country is about making money, okay, and working. And one of the things that I used to say in the 80s when I was growing up, well, I was grown up by then, but I was very young, was that I really felt that all the people spent all their time working, work, that they had no idea what was going on politically and that they were asleep. And that I blamed the government, which just encourages people to work, and make money and buy things rather than looking at what really is going on in their world. So that does make sense to me. Lust means excitement. And it can be an excitement that is organic, like we're all excited about things. It's also about things being organic, okay? Merlin is the ability to actualize what it is that we want. And in the Sibley chart, Merlin falls in the Pluto axis. So Pluto, that planet of power and power struggles, is with Merlin. Zeus has stationed. I wrote this down because on the day that we celebrate the Sibley chart, Zeus stationed. Zeus, guns, explosions, seeds for new beginnings, excitement, restraint, all of the Zeus things are a part of our Pluto. Then we have Asteria, which is, when things do seem to get out of control, that ability to pray, to meditate, to go within. It talks about, Nemesis is blame. It's only 4 minutes out. I put it in there because of the champion chart, which is 5 minutes, or 7 minutes difference. So you've got, but it's only 5 minutes difference on the one I'm using. But in any event, blame, boy, does seem like that's all that happens in this country. As a matter of fact, there's really no good news. Even when Biden does something wonderful, they got to blame him for something. Okay? Blame is in there. Jupiter. Yeah, we are all about expansion, growth, particularly as it relates to finances, even as it relates to debt. Okay, remember, Jupiter is not always good. It just means things expand, but bad things can expand too. As a matter of fact, things expand so much that Lilliputino, a little too little and a little too late, also falls with Pluto. So we make these transformations, but we're so slow about it. We really are. Hypnos is interesting because I relate that to sleeping. And I think that in a country where they put so much emphasis on work, there are sleep issues, which could be another reason why there are mental health issues. It talks about endings. Endings. It really highlights endings. I think this particular Pluto return highlights endings. Health. Polaris. Health is there. Plunge. We are a country that will take risks. Indeed. Plunge, particularly when it comes to power struggles and money. I don't know if that's good. Credo. Especially with Industria. Yeah, I think it is about our credibility as an industrial country. And Pluto is a lot about that, as is Vesta. So that makes a lot of sense, right? Champion is, we are champion, particularly for the underdogs, or so it appears on the surface. I'm not always sure that's really what's going on, especially the last couple of years. The Schmidt is actually kind of an evil guy and, chop off head evil. And, I do know that I do feel that way about our government. I think that there is an evil streak in there too. It talks about the willingness to give and get help. The why gotta. Look at this one right here, right? Okay. Now, one of the things that, I don't know if you remember, but back when I did the original chart, one of the things I talked about was how in this country, people never trust the government. Never, 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 never. We're too busy saying, why God me? Why is this happening to me? Okay. So I think that's pretty interesting. Messenger is retrograde, which does highlight our ability to get messages out. I did hear once that we have a very good press. That's not true. We have a retrograde Mercury, and now we have a retrograde Messenger. I believe our press, and I've said this all along, is not that free. I think that there are free independent writers, and we don't arrest them as they do in some countries. Oh, yeah, countries are going to tell you are socialist, but they're not. They're radical. Socialist countries don't do that. But in any event, the Messenger is concerning to me, as is the Mercury retrograde. And the reason why is because it means that we have to get a lot of our messages internally, and that it also relates to kind of being slow in terms of getting what the message is. It also means that as I looked at remember when I went Poseidon, the Pluto axis, and it was Poseidon for the Republicans, there is a lot of propaganda in our news, and our news is canned. And if you live outside the country, then I don't think it should be too surprising to you to understand that not only do we have canned news, other than the stuff that's on the cable networks, the news we get daily is very canned, and it is all owned by maybe 6 different people, and they're all Republicans, or they're all to the right. So I don't really ever hope to ever hear that again, because I would have such an argument against anyone who tells us that we have this great, strong press. No, we don't. And look at the astrology, because astrology never lies. Okay. So then I decided to, let's be modern. Let's upgrade this thing 250 years or whatever it is. And the first thing I get is this like Mars Apollon, how much we need to do, but also how much energy is being pulled from the people to the business. Because this is America. And unfortunately, businesses and the business types and the whole money thing has really gotten out of control. Pluto! It also talks about Cupido, which is the family, which is groups of people. And one of the things that I get kind of excited about, but I don't know how much, if you're from another part of the world, I don't know how much this will relate to you, but I don't like tribalism. And in a country where you could walk out this door and see at least 5 colors, where in my block alone, where I live, because I live in a city, you could eat at 7 different ethnic restaurants. Okay? And there is, then you have your LBG community, you have your peoples of colors, you have, okay, I'm waiting for the day when we're homogenized. when we stop putting people into categories. But obviously, that time is not now, because there we are. But here's an interesting one. Helidaco is retrograde. And this is big because remember I told you the Republicans really think they're going to win, and all the news thinks they're going to win. That's because there's no speaking out on the other side, speaking up and speaking out, because they don't know how it's going to be reacted upon. You know, death threats in this country, the terrorism of even your neighbors is quite phenomenal, okay? Remember, this is a country that lynched Black and brown people, okay? Killed them, okay? This is not a country where you could speak out and not worry that somebody's going to shoot you, okay? Because the only people that can speak out are the true nuts. Nobody's going to shoot them. They are the nuts, okay? So there's this whole thing about not speaking out. Now, not speaking out highlights Fisher. Lies. What are we dealing with in this country? They're voter suppressing on lies, the basis of the big lie. Ascendant node is in there, and I think that's just us realigning with the people that we are allied with versus those that we are not allied with, okay? Panacea is that we are all about solving problems related to a health field, but we keep running into obstacles. This is another atom. It's an asteroid, but it still causes delays. It still causes obstruction. It still means that we're trying to get to the bottom of the matter. Gawain is talking about people that, and this is the people that can't speak out, don't want to speak out, especially against that big lie, because Gawain is an asteroid of intellectually subservient. In other words, Gawain is actually one of the Knights of the Round Table, but he was very, very smart, but he couldn't cast his opinion and he couldn't tell people what to do. It wasn't his job. Okay, we have a lot of that going on right now where people might try to do their job, but in trying to do their jobs, they're getting a lot of resistance. That can be difficult. Okay, it's talking about how there's still so much we don't know. And as we move through our day-to-day life, hubris is telling us that there are so many things that are fated. Well, one of the things I can honestly tell you about Pluto is it is asking us to look at our karma. And our South Node is not far from it. It's actually on the other side of it. But it is like saying, look, you guys have done some really bad things. And you need to look at that. And is it surprising that the Republicans don't want CRT, which, by the way, is never taught in school? And I'm thinking, no matter where you live, you know that. Okay? But what they don't want is they don't want Black children to be empowered. And they don't want white people to lose their entitlement. I hate to say that, but that's what it comes down to, their fragility. They're worried about that. It's stupid. It's really stupid. Okay? I'll tell you a little secret. As an adult, when I found out some of the history of this country, I was furious that I did not learn it sooner. And I'm a person who studies history, so trust me. I have been spending the last couple of years teaching other people around me about our history, and they too are furious. So what they think they're going to gain by holding things back from children, I do not understand. All you're going to have is a bunch of very upset adults. Okay, so that brings us, so it's destined. We're fated. Shamp says that there is going to be egg on our face, that there is going to be humiliation through this. I believe that as Fisher is known, Helidago comes due, the doo-doo, which is the, excuse my French, the shit is going to fly. And Panacea is going to be like, well, I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was that bad, or I didn't know that was going to be the result. So it's almost like there's a lot of intuition that a lot of this is going to transpire, and we know it. Okay, but do we really know? Because Panacea, not Panacea. We do a Panacea. It's up here. This is Pythia. Pythia. Excuse me, guys. Pythia. Intuition, but not where we really know the result. So we will not know the result of this Pluto return until it is over. Messenger again is retrograde. Always disconcerting when I see that. 9 minutes out is another asteroid of now this one may be out because it is 9 minutes, but more obstacles, delays. It's just the same as this one up here. That's why I make them look the same. Here it tells us, and this is reverse, so it's a lot of complaining. You know, it's interesting because it's grievance, but in a way, you know, you think of this as, no, I'm sorry, it's Ganymede. See, my mind, I really got to end the video. I'm getting off, but I am almost done. Ganymede is about service, okay, but it's also about enabling, and it's retrograde. And I think, just like I did in the 80s, that people have been enabling the government because they don't really know what's going on. Where do we see that? Oh, that's right there, okay? Because we don't know the full extent, we often will put ourselves in a position of enabling, okay? Notice that truth is also retrograde. I think that's because the truth is going to come out eventually. And Lee is going to tell you that when it comes out, it's really going to come out through the internet. Because again, can we really count on the news? I tend to read my news because I know that at least I can read articles that I've researched and that I went after. And I'm reading mostly independent news. But I don't think the rest of the world understands quite how bad it is here. Think of it this way, guys. In, I think it was Australia and in Great Britain, they have gotten rid of faux news. But we still have it here. So just something to consider. In any event, I'm going to end it here. And I want to thank you for watching the video. And please comment, you know, especially the astrologers out there. God, there's so many of you that have such great knowledge that I would love to have even more feedback on this. Because honestly, I could probably spend a whole day talking about these charts. But I tried to expedite it to highlight what I thought was the most important and the most obvious. With that said, as I always leave you, till we meet again, I wish you only happy readings.